Welcome to Point of Disorder. We have a wonderful guest here today for Point of Disorder Shorts, State Representative Natalie Price. Welcome, Natalie. Thank you for joining us. I'm Julie.
I'm Gina.
And I'm Natalie. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast.
We're thrilled to have you here. I'm just going to be biased. One of my favorite state reps.
I'm really lucky because she's actually my
She's
state
actually
rep.
yours, yes.
Actually belongs to me.
So we brought you on today to kind of talk about, I'll say, the drama of the Michigan House and your viral moment from last week because, once again, the Republicans are wasting their time on shit that doesn't matter, like renaming the Gulf of Mexico. Why we need to do that in the Michigan House when we are thousands of miles away from it is beyond me. But why don't you tell us a little bit about what happened? Because, you had a pretty good clap back there.
Yeah. And thanks for amplifying it. I'm happy to use any opportunity to raise awareness about actual important issues that my constituents care about. So we saw that this bill was going to be on the agenda to rename the Gulf of Mexico, and I saw
so important to Michiganders, our top issue.
Who is asking? Trump, right? Trump is asking for it, and our Republican House members want to stroke his ego by doing what he asked for. So we saw it on the agenda. We knew it was absurd, but the approach here was to suggest a tie bar, to offer an amendment that would tie bar this meaningless bill to something incredibly important called the Momnibus package. The Momnibus package passed out of the Senate last week, and it would put a number of protections in place to help with the maternal and fetal health disparities, to help protect working moms and under-resourced moms throughout our state. The Republicans, of course, in the House are showing no interest in doing anything with it. So that was why I decided to offer an amendment saying, okay, I'll vote for your bullshit bill if you tie bar it and connect it to something important.
Natalie, are you telling us that the pro-life Republicans in the Michigan House don't want to help mothers and babies?
Shocking, but it seems to be the least of their priorities.
I just need to point out how cynical you are, Gina. Cynicism is very high.
Silly me.
Hey, that is absolutely bloody brilliant, Natalie. I have to say, apart from anything else, I need to put it out there. There's so much to unpack there. But did you think of that? Was that beforehand? Was that something planned? How did you? I love the fact that you're thinking.
I'm constantly thinking about how I can use their nonsense to do some good. At the very least, again, raising awareness. Now, sometimes they do messaging bills that are, in fact, harmful, that are spreading hate and attacking some of our most vulnerable Michiganders. And I'm not going to say I'm willing to vote for that if you do this. But renaming the Gulf, who cares? None of my constituents care. I'm happy to vote to rename the Gulf if we're going to tie bar it to something good.
As a constituent, I can confirm that I don't give a shit about what they call the Gulf of whatever. Yeah. It doesn't matter. It's just all smoke and mirrors. Yeah. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah, well played.
Well played.
I don't know if you saw it too. They brought it back up this week, but this time as a resolution. And now they're claiming that it has bipartisan support because it was a voice vote. So there's no way to prove or disprove. One of the little silly things we do in the House is that we do voice votes on resolution, and they can say whoever they want voted for it. There's no official record.
There's no record of it?
No. So again, their silly messaging. None of my constituents care, but gaveling us down when we use that as an opportunity to raise awareness for important things. So for anybody who didn't see the video clip, right, I got up, I made this point that I wanted to tie bar it to something good and important. And as soon as I started explaining what the Momnibus does and the fact that it would be protecting women and babies, the speaker...
well, our favorite to talk about, Rachel Smith, who is the conspiracy theorist on the head of the Election Integrity Committee.
So, she gavelled. She called me out of line, which she meant to say out of order.
Yeah,
so hence,
she didn't even get the lingo
that
right.
Is so funny. I saw that and I did get a good chuckle out of that. And I think what's really funny, going back to Gina's point, is I don't know Rachel Smith, whether or not she's a mother or not, but I know her type. right? We've spent enough time around her type would certainly be the ones like marching for that, for our lives and all that kind of stuff, anti-abortion, like, probably protesting out the front of abortion clinics and not wanting people to get health care and all that sort of stuff. So it's truly amazing to me. Anyway.
And the hypocrisy, again, they've been telling us that they don't appreciate how we tell them to use the appropriate gender, to respect not use dead names, right? That they feel their snowflake, right, comes out when we try to get them to respect people for who they are. And yet they're trying to pass a bill to force us to refer to a Gulf by a new name.
We should all just dead name the Gulf of Mexico from here on in. That's so funny.
It was assigned a certain name at its inception.
That's right.
You can't change it now.
Exactly, Gina. I can confirm when
it's on its birth certificate.
I can confirm whilst in Mexico and whilst in Australia, when I looked up, it's still on the Google Maps, the Gulf of Mexico, everywhere else.
As it should be.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we have you here today because in addition to your viral moment, which I loved, you're actually working on something that I think our listeners would be really interested in, right? You're kind of getting like a cohort of House members who are progressive like yourself to come together and talk to stakeholders in the community.
Actually, not just our progressive Dems, but all of our Dems. So I'd love to talk about a project that I'm working on in the Michigan State House. We know that our voters, our constituents, want us to clearly identify who we are and what we stand for as Michigan House Dems. Mm-hmm. We know how incredibly important this is. So we are spending a lot of this time in minority when it feels like our votes don't matter because the Republicans have the votes to do what they want for the most part, getting things out of the House. We're using this time to collaborative governance, to give each other feedback and offer some real tough conversations while we're in minority to be able to identify as Democrats, this is who we are, this is what we stand for. And then we're going to be spending the entire summer asking for more details on those values from our constituents, from partner stakeholders, from experts in the related fields. We will be doing a series of town halls, legislative doors, surveys, roundtables, getting people's feedback. This is who House Dems say we are. This is what we say we stand for. Well, what does that look like to you? Getting down to a policy agenda for us moving forward.
And I think what I love about that most of all, quite honestly, is I suppose I always assumed that, elected officials go to their constituents and represent them. But what I love about this and what I've realised over the years is it's usually the voices of the lobbyists, the people that have the biggest pockets, usually have the biggest mouths and the most access to our elected officials and our candidates. So I love the fact that you're making an actual, and I will hold you to account as well, Natalie. Just FYI, Distill Social will not, we will not be sitting back and just nodding and saying yes, ma'am, may I have another. Actually allowing us to have, as constituents, to have a seat at the table and to drive the agenda. So thank you so much for leading that.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what we need, is for people to hold your representatives accountable, to participate, to fill out the survey, to answer the door when we knock, to come to our town halls. And if you're one of our partner organizations, come to the roundtables, because we need to hear from you. We're going to give a vision of our values, but we need to know, what does that look like for you? You need to shape the policies that we're ready to push as soon as we bring back the trifecta and can move our state forward.
And it makes it so much easier to get reelected, let me tell you. That's going to make it a little easier, right? We understand. And then, as I said, keeping you accountable.
What do you think the legislative priorities will be when we regain a trifecta?
That's what we're in the process of shaping now. So we are at the stage internally within our caucus where we've identified some pillars, buckets, kind of big picture things that will be shaping those town halls and roundtables around. Mm-hmm. Nothing will be surprising in terms of basic Dem values, access to public education, good quality health care, making sure that people get the essential services and protections that they need. But in terms of the policy level, package level priorities, we won't be ready to talk about those until the end of our town halls, legislative doors, surveys. We will be gathering the ideas and priorities of those from our constituents.
Well, I'm sure the Momnibus will be part of that.
Yes. Well,
Well, it's been there for a while, quite honestly. I remember being up in Lansing when they introduced the omnibus for a lobby day. And I swear to God, that was like 2 or 3 years ago. So it's been there a while. So something we have to hold you accountable for as well.
So the way that a collective shared policy agenda work is that no individual has any more power over what that agenda will be than anyone else. And that was what partly you may have heard me push back a little bit on the progressives in the caucus. As you know, I'm a very proud progressive. And I am taking on the lead role of organizing this process. But my vision, my policies are no more being pushed on the collaborative agenda than anybody else's. It doesn't mean I won't be going back to my district and fighting for things that are important to my community, but the shared collective consensus agenda is something that we feel confident we'll be ready to move on as soon as we get back. So, and for people who are interested in learning more about this process, it's modeled on the Minnesota Values Project. In Minnesota, they had the trifecta. They were told that they better take it slowly and not ruffle too many feathers or they wouldn't be able to get reelected. And they made the mistake of not doing what their constituents put them there to do. And then they lost it. And when I talked to the Minnesota legislators who found themselves in that position, they said they regretted every day that they didn't put their people above the profits. So they spent their time in minority to work on a collaborative agenda. And when they got back into power, they had all of those policies up on the whiteboard in their caucus room, and they checked off every single thing that they told their constituents that collectively they would do. So that's what we're working on. We're building toward that consensus, building toward that goal of being able to do the things that our constituents are counting on us to do for them.
Well, luckily we have your number and we will keep you accountable. So thank you, State Rep Natalie Price.
Thank you.
No, I mean, that all sounds wonderful. And I feel like that's exactly what this moment is calling for. So thank you so much for coming on today. It's been great to chat.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. And we will say bye for now. See you next time.
Ciao.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of Point of Disorder. We'd like to extend a huge thank you to everyone who listened today. And if you like us, give us a like, a subscribe, or a review on any place you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Distill Social and at The Guerrilla Politic. This is the Point of Disorder podcast, signing off. Stay sharp, stay progressive, and above all, stay tuned.